Shwmae a chroeso I Sgwrs, podlediad Consortiwm Canolbarth y De. Yn y podlediad hwn byddwch chi'n clywed y trafodaethau diweddara am bob math o bethau addysg. Hello and welcome to Sgwrs, the Central South Consortium podcast. In this podcast we'll bring you the very latest discussions on all things education.
Hi and welcome to Sgwrs. So today we're going to hear from a school in Cardiff and how they've worked to achieve high standards and aspirations in the vital skill of literacy, and more specifically in our national priority area of reading. So I'm thrilled today to be joined by Lauren Sharp from Whitchurch High School. The school is a comprehensive school located in North Cardiff with just over 2,400 pupils. So welcome, Lauren.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. So I know, Lauren, that you've been doing some work on reading for quite a number of years now. Can you just talk me through kind of what instigated those changes for you?
So I think the formal start of it, I'm an English specialist, so my background has always been in literacy, and in particularly I've always had a real keen interest in reading. I think that a lot of English specialists would agree that reading is sort of the building blocks for everything, really. Without reading, the writing and the oracy, they can't happen as well. Good readers write well as well, don't they? So the reading's kind of the start for me. So but formally, the start of the 2023 academic year, I changed roles. So I was previously in a behaviour, child protection, wellbeing assistant headship in Whitchurch, and we had a new head teacher who felt that it was appropriate to have an assistant head with responsibility for skills that would give it kind of the prominence and the focus that was needed to get that right across the school, because it is such a massive area. It's a massive area for curriculum for Wales. It's a huge area generally, and it's of great importance, isn't it, to students and staff. And I think as secondary school, it can be quite difficult to get that right across the school. So he felt that having an assistant head with that responsibility would kind of combat some of those problems. The summer term, I just come back from maternity leave, so the summer term just before September 2023, we started to sort of formulate some ideas in my few weeks back before the summer holidays. Was really fortunate to be able to visit some other colleagues, some in Cathays High School and some in Kevin Hengoed, who just had a really good inspection based on their skills. But there were common themes between both of those schools, though their approaches were different. And the common theme is that it was authentic. I think lots of teachers who've been in the game for a while will remember the literacy and numeracy framework of about 10, 12 years ago, where it was very gratuitous, it was very paperwork heavy, it was English having to do numeracy starters and things like that. It wasn't what I wanted, and that's what we really saw in these kind of two schools that I saw, was that there was this shared language, it was authentic, it was useful to students, it wasn't an add-on. So our inspection, I think, came at a good time and a bad time, because it was in December of that year, so in December 2023. So it was bad because while it was kind of noted that the direction and the vision for skills was a strength, there wasn't kind of the time to be able to embed, to be able to show that impact. So there were pockets of good practice, but I wouldn't say it was coordinated. The good thing about that, though, is that it drove the improvements at a real pace. So it was a catalyst for change, really. The key things that I kind of wanted to change initially was like staff confidence with the explicit teaching of literacy, and for there to be a common and consistent approach to the teaching of reading skills. And hand in hand with that really was one of our pedagogy principles, one of our pedagogy priorities, which was challenge and increasing the levels of challenge across the curriculum.
And that's really interesting, isn't it? Because seeing that inspection almost as like an opportunity, as that catalyst for change, I think is really interesting. But also, like you say, that authenticity that you see in those other schools, that not just bolting things on for the sake of it, and I know that's been really intrinsic to your vision. So obviously you're there now as an assistant head, and we know, don't we, how much that leadership plays any kind of role in change management. So when I came and visited you, I know I was really impressed with you as a strategic team and how you'd managed that change around reading. Can you talk to us about how and why you did certain things?
Yeah, I think with any change management, the first thing is you as a leader have to be really clear on the why you're doing something. And I've touched on that briefly. I can't defend the why of why an English teacher has to do, like, I remember I did one in numeracy starter. I'm talking about the LMS again. I did a numeracy starter where, like, we were reading Harry Potter and they had to add up all the different money, and it was so pointless. And I can't defend the rationale of why. I think you have to really think carefully about why you're doing something and really believe in it, and be able to kind of get that buy-in from all your, like, key stakeholders. So for me, the explicit and quality teaching of reading skills is a moral imperative. I would not be able to sleep at night if we had children leaving this school who aren't able to access a wide range of texts, who feel that doors are closed to them because their literacy skills aren't good enough. It's an easy sell, really, reading and literacy, to be honest. For anyone that's a teacher, you want the best for children and you want to be able to do what's best for them in your subject, and you're happy to do things that will help in your subject and that will help students in life. So it's not a difficult sell to get people to buy into how important reading skills are. The other why kind of element for me was that I really wanted it, as I've mentioned, to be really authentic, not an add-on. I wanted the teaching to be, like, intrinsic, like the pedagogy to be like it's natural, it's kind of flowing for people. So I think following on from that, like, I've talked a little bit about Kevin Hengoyd and Cate's, like, identifying the best practice, but also we'd concurrently had a couple of members of staff from school at the Read and Reconsidered training for Central South, and my head of English is a faculty leader for English. Kirsty Price is the person who kind of brought back saying, I want these 6 strategies to be really intrinsic to the teaching of English in this school. And she was thinking about it from a faculty perspective. And I think when I line manage English, so when we discussed it, I think we kind of both together, like, this would actually be very good for everyone. This would actually be really good school-wide. These are not difficult strategies. They are they're going to help in terms of challenge. They're going to help students to be able to access such a wide range of text. They're going to help teachers think more carefully about how can we get them to read rather than kind of giving them information. And it hit a lot of areas, I think. So that's what we kind of decided to go on. But more broadly, obviously, because I'm in charge of skills, not just literacy, or just numeracy and DCF, we did decide to have a system whereby faculties where it is most relevant would kind of focus a bit more closely on those skills. So for example, we wouldn't be expecting RB religious studies, for example, to be shoehorning numeracy in, for example, but we all agreed, actually, as a staff and as faculty leaders, that that the reading would be a priority for everybody. So alongside faculties where numeracy is kind of their main thing, they would still have a really keen focus on the reading strategies and on embedding those reading strategies. And I know when you came, you saw it done really successfully in a science lesson, and science is not one that we'd maybe think, oh yeah, that's a subject that is going to bring reading on. But our science faculty have been really on board with it. They can see the benefit of students being able to access really tricky text and being able to access tricky concepts because of their reading skills improving. So so I think we came up with, I was very clear on the why, on the rationale for it. We came up with our idea. It's quite a simple idea as well. It's not something which feels bolted on. It's not something which feels inauthentic to, like, you as a teacher in the classroom.
I think Read and Reconsidered, for those of you who don't know, is a 3-day training program that we run in Central South, and it's about kind of developing really rigorous reading pedagogy. It's a really successful program. We've literally just finished a cohort this week, actually, with more teachers from your school were on that. And what's great about it is that it can be applied in that cross-curricular format. Of course, I saw it in your school with humanities and science, and it was really great to see it embedded across the curriculum there. So obviously, to enact that, you must have built in time and space for staff. So can you talk me through kind of how you did that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the most important things. I think that staff with the best will in the world I think it's really important to never forget how difficult it is to teach a 5-lesson day with a break duty and a meeting after school. I think that anything that you as a leader bring it in, you need to allow time for it to be physically embedded. So if you're asking staff to put things into schemes of learning, you must allow time for that to happen. Otherwise, with the best will in the world, it's going to be something which happens kind of summer term and everyone's exhausted. So it's got to be given that time and space. I think I began by kind of doing a whole staff inset. This is back in November 2023, raising confidence about the explicit teaching of literacy skills. So just really starting with, we've got school improvement groups that work within our school, which are focused on one area of the school improvement plan. My group are obviously a skills group, but my group are made up of, all the school improvement groups are made up of different responsibility holders in different faculties, and also staff who volunteered. So all those staff all from all different subject specialisms, and they kind of led their own like little workshops on like apostrophes and commas and all those things that you might not be 100% confident on the delivery of if you're not doing it sort of day in, day out as your bread and butter. And teaching staff are degree educated, aren't they? They know why they're writing in a certain way, or they know why they're choosing to write in a certain style, but they can't always explain it. Those things are like just skills that you've got, aren't they? And I think that the main idea that I'd had at the beginning was I really wanted staff to be explicit about the teaching. Like I'd read David Didow's The Secret to Literacy. I wanted people to be, which is another really good would recommend. I wanted people to be very if they're writing a sentence on the board, to put, I'm putting however now, which needs a comma because it's a connective, and then after that I'm going to have something which contradicts my previous sentence because I put however. I want it to just be like that kind of natural. But so it began with that. Then I think alongside this, like the vision for the reading skills, like the 6 reading strategies, really sort of crystallized over the subsequent months. And over that time, then I trained faculty leaders on them, like what they looked like, how they could be kind of applied into lessons. And then subsequently, there were 2 inset days focused just on the upskilling of staff on the professional learning. There was one in July 2024, which was the introduction to the 6 reading strategies. And this time was given in the afternoon for staff to work in faculties, to start putting them into lessons, start putting them into resources. And then following on from this, we had another inset in November 2024 with the same focus, but it was able to be slightly more focused because obviously I'd seen during our school quality assurance processes, I'd seen what was going on and how there was some misunderstanding about some of them, particularly explicit vocabulary instruction. Actually, I think staff struggled with a little bit because I think it's so hard to get away from. This has to be a word to do with my subject. It's really difficult to say no. It's not to do with your subject. It's your tier 2 sort of vocabulary. But that's a training need. Staff will still ask each other now in the English faculty, like, do we think this is a tier 2 one? Do we think this works? Like, do we think this is something which is going to be helpful generally? And it's like that kind of collaborative approach, really. I'm really fortunate to have a really good literacy coordinator who I know you know as well, Emma Aston, she's fab, who's worked alongside faculty leaders to be able to like look at resources and help to support them. But I think that there needs to be like physical time and space given to staff. Like I said, the buy-in was actually far less of an issue than with maybe some other more contentious issues, because there's nobody that can argue that it's our responsibility to equip children with these skills, and it's all of our responsibility. I used to be in behaviour is everybody's job, and so is reading, so is literacy.
And you're so right, though, about building in that time and space, because something we can see is like change fatigue, isn't it? When you're trying to layer on initiative after initiative, people, and get that change fatigue. And I think I loved something you said when I came to visit the school the other day, and you kind of said, this is what we're doing, and this is all we're going to be focusing on with reading for the next sort of period of time, because we need to embed those changes, not just move on to something else, and that change not become embedded. So it's really clear that you as senior leaders have really supported the implementation of this process. How have you kind of done that between you as SLT?
Just to touch on the point you just made, sorry, briefly about the change being for a long time, I will say to my visit to Kevin Hengood really helped me with that, is that the language is the same, you know, the language that's being used around, and they were reading strategies. It wasn't the read and reconsidered ones, but, you know, very
reading behaviours, isn't it?
Yes, it was, in fact, yes. And the assistant head there said, we've been doing this for 10 years and we're not going to change. You know, reading, it doesn't change, like the skills of it doesn't change. So that is something which was really important to me, that it's not something that like we're doing and then next year we're going to try this and next year we're going to try this. Like, this is something which is good practice.
It's having that commitment and staying the course with it, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. And I think in line with that, I've mentioned obviously that to go back to your question, sorry. I think that the head, my head, has been incredibly supportive, even when he's had kind of a few like quibbles or concerns about like, oh, what should we do about writing now? What, I'm just a bit worried that we're not doing anything to do with writing. Like, he's been really supportive of me saying, no, trust me, now we'll do this and we'll be that will kind of take care of itself. And I think we're seeing that now, like a year and a half in, we're really seeing the quality and quantity of writing is self-improving because of the work that we've done on reading. So he was very, very supportive. He had like real trust in the vision and real trust that what we were doing was the right thing to do. I think also there's been like a real help in terms of like you create what you give time to, don't you? And that time has been really important. Like the professional learning time has been really important. There's been kind of appropriate prominence given to it. So one of the deputies who's in charge of self-evaluation, she has when she's created an observation of learning form, she's been sure to include, can we see the reading strategies here? You know, what proportion of students are demonstrating the reading strategies effectively? Like, that's in the books, you know, it's embedded in terms of
integrated.
Yes. I very much didn't want there to be a separate quality assurance process for skills. It needs to be part of the fabric of the school, part of like the self-evaluation of the school and the self-improving school. Otherwise it goes by the way, it is an add-on, it goes by the wayside, and that's not what it should be. That's not what literacy particularly should be.
I think what you said there about the writing improving as well is really interesting, because one of the strategies actually in Reading Reconsidered is reading for writing, and how they're synergistic. And how they're synergistic, and how you learn syntactic control through reading and things like that.
Absolutely.
So you've kind of talked, you know, you had a really clear strategy, and like you said, you had strong staff buy-in because they kind of get that literacy is everyone's job. But were there any potential barriers? Were there any barriers you encountered, and kind of what did you do to overcome those?
Yes, I think with any change, and I've led change here on a couple of fronts. The behaviour system and stuff was all changed when I started here. Like, I've led change on a couple of fronts, and I think there's always going to be staff who like we talked about change fatigue briefly, didn't we? There's always going to be staff that feel like this is another thing, this is something different, and that I was very cautious about staff feeling it was taking away from content, that they were feeling like we've got all this content to get through, particularly at Key Stage 4, like we've got all this to get through and this is like taking away from that. And I think it wasn't just me that overcame that. I think I do have to say that the school improvement group that I work with, I've got 2 scientists in there, for example, and they were both very firm on this isn't taking away from content, like this is content, like this like
way you deliver it, isn't it?
Yes. So I was very keen on tackling that like at the initial stages, and I think with the professional learning that's taken place, it's been very kind of rationale heavy, like why heavy, like very active. The professional learning, like the staff have been really like undertaking these reading strategies themselves, so they can really understand like how the levels of challenge that are required and how important it is that we're all able to do these things, but students are also able to do these things. But I also think for our school context, there's now a greater maybe understanding of how important these literacy skills are. Like, our school is a true comprehensive school, and there are students who really need this provision, like this pedagogy. They really need, there are in all comprehensive schools, but you know, there's a cohort of students who really need this to be modelled effectively, like the literacy skills explicitly to be modelled effectively to them, and for them to have those opportunities to access this like range of texts. And I think that again, it is not a hard sell here. I don't imagine it would be in many schools.
No.
I think that another barrier is probably confidence of staff. I think staff have kind of you maybe feel that I'm not sure about picking this text, so I don't know if it's too hard, I don't know if it's like relevant. And I think that was tackled sort of like by responsive professional learning. So the November inset was kind of really explicitly looking at like examples and more support. I've got another one coming up in May that's going to be based on the recent quality assurance that we've done, observations of learning, and like we've seen this, and where do we think we still need more support with embedding the reading strategies. And also, you know, again, my literacy coordinator is really great with responding to people's queries and working directly with heads of faculty to support them with that kind of thing. But you know, it isn't a hard sell. You know, it's been really heartening, in fact, to see how staff have embraced it and how keen they are to get it right for the students.
And I think, like you said, you know, that starting with the why, that's what we talk about with curriculum for Wales. It's a purpose-driven curriculum. It's about starting with why are we teaching this content? Why does it matter to our learners? It's the same with teachers, isn't it? Why is this important? That starting with the why and that rationale is really, really important. And obviously your role now is as assistant head with assessment and progression skills, but your background, obviously, as you talked about, is English and literacy. So going kind of back to that classroom practice, how did you kind of look at that? How did you look at transforming classroom practice? How did you make it relevant to all the teachers across your school? I know we kind of touched on some of this.
Yeah, I think again, it comes back to like a really clear strategy, doesn't it? Like being really, really clear on the why, on this is the best practice, this is what we're going to do here, having like the professional learning linked really closely to the strategy then, and then, you know, the repeated like opportunities to like clarify and address misconceptions. So that's really what our November inset was on, was like the misconceptions, like how can we do this, like the modelling of it, and the modelling of this is how it's done. I also think that growing the group of experts, I've mentioned the school improvement group with a variety of staff from different disciplines, that's been really helpful. They've delivered a number of times on the reading strategies in their particular subject areas, and that's been really great.
And that matters a huge amount, doesn't it? Because if you can see it in your own classroom, if you can see it, you can do it, can't you? You know,
totally.
So having those range of people across the curriculum really helps.
Yeah, I think we are fortunate in that all of our teachers have been really on board with it and have worked collaboratively. But a few years ago, we set out like a school vision, which was to do with a child called Alex, like a gender neutral child called Alex, and what we wanted him or her to be like when they'd finished school, and kind of came up with like a mission statement. It was my previous head, Mark Powell, that led on that, and came up with a sort of like, we want them to have learned this, like we want them to say this about their experience in school, like that they do the right thing even when no one's watching, they're able to do this, they're able to read any text that comes their way, all these basically statements. And I think that we've really taken that on as something which sort of drives all change within school and drives all kind of practice, is that what do you want them to say when they're in their mid-20s about this is what I got from being here. They get one chance through, don't they? They get 5-7 years in school, they get one go at it. What do you want them to have taken away from that? It's an important part of their lives. You know, we all talk about when we were in school, don't we? Still, like in my mid-30s, I still talk about what I did in school. You want that to kind of be like defining. So it's us that do that. So I think that school vision, like the improving outcomes, improving challenge and things like that, I think all teachers want that. And they want to be able to do the best for the children in front of them. They want to be like part of that, making that person, don't they, when they finish school. And I think, again, it's not really a difficult sell when you're going down those lines, you know.
But I love that idea of this pupil Alex, because it makes it real, doesn't it? When you're projecting your vision onto a theoretical pupil, it kind of makes it realer for what you want. I really like that idea. So obviously you've been working on this for a number of years now. Where are you in terms of impact? What are you seeing in terms of the classroom, teaching, or on pupils? What are you noticing there?
I think that it's a big ship to steer. So we've got
Yeah,
130 teaching staff. Yeah, so it's a big school. So what I would say to anyone thinking of kind of making this kind of change, like with these reading strategies, is just keep at it. Start pitch to the top. You know, I said to my head, in 3 years' time, I want to be able to walk into any classroom in this school, pick up any book, and I can see the reading strategies. I say to a child, what's writing for reading, and show me where you've done it. They can show me. You start with that, basically. and then you're driving towards it. However, we're about 18 months in, and I feel through our quality assurance processes, I've seen it through our quality assurance processes, there's like real higher levels of challenge and independence. There's sometimes, particularly at Key Stage 4, Year 10 and 11, there can be a little bit of a leaning towards information transmission, where you're trying to get through the content. You're trying to get, that I think has lessened because of the reading strategies. I think children are expected a lot more to read for themselves and to get that information, assimilate that information. We've seen, you saw when we came to a history lesson, we're seeing examples of teachers giving them a really challenging text and then modelling how they summarise, reading that's a lot more of that going on. We've done some initial analysis on the personalised tests, and there's improved scores for reading. There's also been quite a lot of student voice feedback about challenge and about kind of wider text. They're seeing a wider range of text. They're seeing a lot more challenging text in all kind of subjects. And I think I didn't touch on this earlier, but English, we had to lead from the front, and we reviewed our texts and found that the year 7 to 9 ones, they were too easy. They weren't challenging enough. They weren't making students, they weren't doing what we were asking kind of everybody else to do in terms of levels of challenge. So that's been changed now. I think we spoke quite a bit when you came to visit. We spoke quite a bit about disadvantaged students and about ALN students, and how this is where the greatest impact is. And this is where
I loved what you said, because we had a couple of people in the school, didn't we? And one of them sort of said, "Oh, but how are your disadvantaged people coping?" And I loved your answer. I thought everyone should have it on a t-shirt kind of afterwards, but it matters for them the most.
It does, and I really believe that. My background is, from a school with really high levels of EFSM before I came here, and I've seen that in practice. Like I've seen it makes the most difference to those students. And EFSM children are not like one group, they're not all the same, but there are trends that we can see in terms of exposure to reading, exposure to text, parental education levels, those kinds of things where they're only getting this from school. So it's absolutely imperative that we're having the greatest long-term impact on these students, and we're preparing them for, if they want to go on to sixth form, if they want to go on to university study, so much of the knowledge building strategy for Read and Reconsidered that we do, that we have as a focus. So that's so crucial. We can't assume that all students have got this knowledge. And I remember there was I think it was when I was training, so this is a long time ago, but there was an issue with one of the papers. I don't think it was WPC. There was an issue with one of the exam papers about describing like an airport lounge or something, like a busy airport, and like so much assumption is made there in terms of students' experiences, like where they've come from, like what it is that they've actually seen and experienced, that we can't have these assumptions that students know what these words mean, that they've seen text like this before, that they've asked these questions at home and had an answer. We can't have those assumptions. It's got to be us. It's got to be us that's doing this, and it does make the greatest impact for our disadvantaged students.
And I think it's like you say, it's that only second chance for some pupils, isn't it? We had a similar situation in Wales on the WJC paper with, you are going back maybe 15, 20 years now, with the word glacier, and a lot of children not knowing what a glacier was, and therefore totally misreading the entire passage. So you're absolutely right, that knowledge side alongside the skills are really, really important. You mentioned talking about reviewing your year 7 curriculum and your 7 to 9 curriculum, and I know when we spoke, you kind of sort of said, oh, actually we found out that our primaries were doing some of those tests. And there wasn't so talk to me about your cluster or your collaboration working. How's that going? Is any of this kind of transferring to the cluster? Are you looking at any of that?
Yeah, so it's on a small scale at the moment. The ultimate vision, you know, I'm all about ultimate vision.
Yeah, big.
The ultimate vision is to have a year 5 to year 9 kind of consistent kind of like the skills being used consistently. It doesn't need to be the same content. It doesn't need to be the same. You must do this book. You must do that. But I want those skills to be across all of our cluster primaries, being called the same thing, and being used kind of consistently. And so that when we get students in year 7, we actually, for such a large cohort, have quite a small number of students from outside cluster, about 30 per year, which we've got 400 children, so that's a very small percentage. But I want all of those students to have had these common experiences, and it also, you know, it's great for challenge building and things like that. I think our primary colleagues are very good at challenge, actually, but I think these explicit reading skills, I would like for them to be being used consistently across all of our cluster primary. So I'm working with Birchgrove Primary School at the moment really closely. They read this amazing text I'd never heard of in year 6 called Once. I don't know if you've read it. It's really, really good. It's a Second World War like fiction text. And so I've basically been doing, they gave me the text, so I've met a number of times with the year 6 teacher over there who's been absolutely fab, Lara, and she's been absolutely brilliant. And we've together kind of planned things like, so it's about a young Jewish boy who's looked after in a Catholic orphanage, and it's like got an unreliable narrator in it. He talks all the time about, oh, but it's okay for me because my parents aren't dead. I know my parents aren't dead because they sent me a message by giving me an extra carrot at dinner and stuff like that. So it's a very, it's a dense text. It's very layered. It's very nuanced. And I'm going over there tomorrow actually to deliver a lesson to year 6. Where I found an article, Lara and I found an article about a woman whose mother was looked after, was hidden in a Catholic orphanage in Poland during the Second World War. So it's a knowledge building, some post reading going on as well. So that kind of joint planning, that joint working, that the Birchgrove particularly have been really on board, like the principles and the relevance and the fact it's not taking away from anything they're doing. You know, we're all protective of our own practice, aren't we? We're all like strive to be great practitioners, so it's never going to be a case of me coming in and saying, no, you've got to do it differently now. It complements actually a lot of the practice that primary schools do anyway.
It's kind of more that shared language, isn't it? Shared language and calling things the same thing when we're doing them, and kind of that sort of almost like non-negotiables, but the freedom to allow you to apply that to what content you want.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So
and it's, to expand that, I guess, is kind of the next thing for this academic year. We'll work with Birchgrove, and then I'm hopeful then that there'll be a couple of more primary schools to work with next year, and eventually, that kind of model I'm hoping will spread.
Yeah, so that's actually what I was going to ask is, where next? I know you love your big picture vision. So
I do.
So we've got cluster working as a next step. Is there anything else that you would put on your where next?
Yes, I think more of the same. So I won't be kind of happy until it's there out in the wild all the time, until you can go out and see it happening everywhere. Hear students talking about it, staff talking about it, see it in books, see it in lessons and schemes of learning, until we've got a situation where our children coming through are really confident and capable and are going on to Key Stage 4, and they're not meeting these roadblocks in terms of their own literacy skills. They haven't got this ceiling on them because they can't read as well as they need to be able to. That's the ultimate, the ultimate, I want that to be my legacy.
I love it. Thanks so much for your time today. I honestly could talk to you for hours about literacy, and I'm sure people will really have enjoyed listening to how you've worked to kind of move towards those high standards and aspirations for reading. And of course, if there's any school out there in CSC that wants support or professional learning for reading, or in fact any other area of the curriculum, then please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Lauren.
Thank you.
Diolch am wrando ar y bennod hon o Sgwrs. Cofiwch ein dilyn ar Twitter a Facebook, tanysgrifio ein sianel YouTube, ymuno yn cymunedau ar ein gwefan a darllen ein bwletin ysgolion wythnosol am y newyddion diweddaraf. Thanks for listening to this episode of Sgwrs. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, join our online communities via our website, and read our weekly school bulletin for the latest news. Hwyl am y tro. Bye for now.